All right.
Tateri ngazo cije kare cije ngaji nganga barwa.
Lazala.
Cheson tateri de karke gindulana sede metaba imba. Teyo nanji chame imbi kortendeji take gindu. Cije ngaji nganga bategi sene nemu lungi tabayi. Chubu wejon metana. Ungu unju niji lobale. Senka kono teni ngocha chese. Cheson ta ludu ke 다 ngazu tanda mi luten za chibu hibuji tode yeres ane tate peche yabu tongu res te peche yabu ji matongwa ina ane komitapa res te yo nanjin chame res tene keche desu heyindowa tse nisi du mi ki mise te la pache mumbu hibu yere la nepa mo la na shi ki pache non ki pache shipena dala sopa ke pache shene yon mise tholon do guyanda bo ani nong pache te ne nda munda tende nane yon mise tholon do guyanda bo ta tende rese pe go ba ina tene mame lung jesa no go de ba no ji chaw de yeres mame de lung jesa go she ba ina kaldu mame de hinro ha ko ya me ba no shi ngarun so yo tene da bo nyika ji ta ne de yeres 요나네 추추를 좀 메타시도 나조 추기 띵도 예도 추불세야라 추기 보아세야 제로와 텔레 좀 다른 나론속이 미세데 에 다니까 차야지도 메타바 인체야 된지르데 예리스 세상다 된데 인도 대솔 쏘는 동 셰셰네 아니 다 단조 지밀루 rum보치 세난다 아미 미세세난다 다티 peche yabuji toyan taki chiya desu ta nengo chondugi yeba nende rishaas tende xeegi yere. Tega noshin tene ngazo u pa tongne eni tsu unga paru tela mahi ne eni ngazo mise ne ju yeba te halebu hiro rishaas. Tega noshin ngazo togon gonda pa na ku ne eni sonji yonjo ya ni se ne tende riya te yon pe mizi halewa opportunity chebo hiwoji rishas mato ane pe ngazo sede meta batende ji rishas te induta ngazo zaza hiwo shigoya rishas ane ngazo pe misi ta misi te peche yaboji tonya don nyudu tonya don ane kalse gurugo tono tene ane misi te tendo tenpa ji zoya shiji te so ta nengo chogindu sile tende shene luduke korongi ta tobo 아니 자부 대시 좀부 텔라자 니수 자신에 아니 제네 가론소 라용 라송아임바 드네지 희게르다
All right. So, um, welcome everyone for this session. And just getting right into it, we are currently discussing verse number 55, which discusses how our lives are impermanent and how there is no certainty whatsoever as to when we'll pass away. So the verse reads, with all its many risks, this life endures, no more than wind-blown bubbles in a stream. How marvelous to breathe in and out again, to fall asleep and then awake refreshed. So what Nagarjuna is discussing here is how this physical support of being a human being is extremely precious, and we have to use it well. If we don't, then this physical body is impermanent, and there's absolutely no certainty as to when we'll have to die. And so in the verse, it says um, many risks, meaning that there are a lot of obstacles to our lives, a lot of conditions that might cut life short, outer and inner obstacles. Outer obstacles would include things like enemies, other people who might try to end our lives. Inner obstacles like sicknesses. There are many different sicknesses that we could catch that would also cut our life short. So, an example we could use is that our lives are just as fragile as a candle placed in the wind. If you put a burning candle in a place where there's a lot of wind, it could be blown out at any time. It also says in the verse, this life endures no more than wind-blown bubbles in a stream. We can also liken our lives to bubbles that form in the water of a stream. And when the wind is blowing, there's no certainty at all that those bubbles would stick around. So, reflecting on these examples and how impermanent our life is, we must make sure to put our precious human life to good use. That's the gist of this verse. And the second part of the verse here is talking about how even between something as simple as breathing out and then again breathing in, the fact that we don't simply pass away between one breath to the next, that's already something marvelous. And similarly, to fall asleep and then to wake up the next morning, to not have passed away in our sleep, that's something amazing as well. It's something that we really should appreciate. And with that kind of attitude, we have to be very careful and take care of our bodies, of this life, putting it to good use, really being very earnest and trying to make our lives meaningful. So this is the advice that Nagajuna gives to the king, Dechizampo. And indirectly, of course, it also applies to all of us as well.
예전 다때 인도 체미다 비코데 히인도와 히론다 가론조 넘바 소지 비기 룰라 아니 메다 비콜 소노 동시에 메다 비콜데 요요 사일렌 텐시야 테소 단nen거 지부인바 까담미 라마티소기 논주시에 지예바레 준센다보디 가르라와이나 메다 비콜데 소노 야보지 마동 고 야보지 마세바이나 아니 가서 치바 쳐기 말이스 아니 가서 게 코에 타야기 레가트 수치기 말이스 아니 가서 게레가 두자모보 시히레스 샤잠 메타바세드 자치부 히오지레 메타발 소노톤 셰와이나 디고네 디바테소 요메바조 투기레 아니 치 zon기지 차기레 다 메타바세드 스콜 소노톤에데 자치부 히오지레스 헤이레.
So the verse is speaking about impermanence, how our life is impermanent. And this is something that we have to think about again and again. The Kadampa lamas, the Kadampa teachers used to mention impermanence again and again. And the reason for this is that if we don't understand impermanence, and if we don't think about it often, we won't become Dharma practitioners. We won't put forth effort to be free of samsara. So impermanence is extremely important. If we have a good understanding of impermanence, we'll be able to disengage from non-virtue, and we'll be able to practice virtue, Dharma practice, really, really authentically.
Sheso tene inba indu soje jamdinde tene sonu tonju alonga yasho de metabukol sonu tonya teres metabukol sonu tonkin tende yena tela konge rejoice zogins ani konge shinla de te yins tende sun shebarwa ta tende sun gibi giba johnson te metabukol tel sonu ton shene ani ngaron soke semba de jowa ton tugi yere mado yenda kongo ton tugi meba yimba shezan metabikola MSS de jirag nenga yimba ji yinzang tende chene ani kongsun songares.
Therefore, the Blessed One, the Buddha, also taught that out of everything you could contemplate or think about, the best thing to think about is impermanence. If there's someone who earnestly contemplates impermanence, the Buddha himself said, I rejoice in that person and I grant my blessing. And the reason that the Buddha said this is because if we think about impermanence, it really changes our minds. And there's nothing else that can change our minds that in the same way that impermanence can. So it's an extremely important point, and this is why the Buddha mentioned it with such emphasis.
Egano ji ta kadam begi lama pudo wa sengi ji shungre kongi yidang rabu de metapa de yin sumbar ani kongi metabikol keja mubu he yere ta ani kong bela ta kadam bi lama kedo chia ji zi yerwa ani kongi khashi de shilole tandogi yesarwa ani mete so gilagi yere chorong lama de gi metabiko ma do he yi mu yenda he yesa mare che yenda he gurse la tejibo he de na cho mundu se yindu se tende ya keja te so chorong lama la grace tende la du ani ke lama le keja te so ya la ro la du ani pudo wa ki la wa re nga ki ni ani metaba no shin chi saba chi ta chi wo yin ba ji ani njama sons ani metaba de ha kona ani chiba chaba yo te ki zogindus diba muzo ke yo te ki zogindus ani chi mudu kinji na chi dunke changi te ki zogindus chi loso mudu kinji na loso dunke yo te ki zogindus ani tabi gi lahne le simba te ki yo te ki zogindu ta metaba ko de le lo ji ye mare koruzo kare lana la sil tat ne ke shere shebare yazan kongi yidante denchong da bo to che do jin da bo shin re zite su zogi mebare kongi yidante metaba de zogi re tate ngune tu da bo hiwoji re ko metaba gi lonjwa tong ye re ma do che do go thong kan da bo ji ga she ne lonjwa to al te khala khabo ye bara o tne yin bare.
There was also the Kadampa Lama Putua, who used to say that my Yidam deity, the deity that I practice, is impermanence. And so in his teachings, he would always talk about impermanence. Again and again, he would bring the teachings back to impermanence. And he's one of the more famous Kadampa Lamas in Tibet, right? So people would sometimes ask, like, this Lama, the only thing he talks about is impermanence. Why is that? Well, he would mention then that actually there's nothing that I've seen, no Dharma teaching that I've seen or encountered, which is more profound or more important than impermanence. Understanding impermanence will make you a Dharma practitioner. It will make you someone who avoids non-virtue. And conversely, if you don't understand impermanence, then that will hinder you from becoming a real Dharma practitioner. That will hinder you from really putting a stop to engaging in non-virtue. Understanding impermanence will lead you to freedom, to liberation. And so he said that my deity, my yidam, is not Hevaja or Avalokiteshvara, it's impermanence. And the reason that he had to say that he emphasized this point, is that it's very difficult to actually change our minds, to really make a deep change from the depths of our heart. Um, that is why he chose to emphasize impermanence and take it as his main practice in this way.
대인도 나름 속에 땜바 쫀된데요. 아니 메타비키네스 쪼부테서 코르게 통셰셰네 아니 디기네 닌중기 로데레셰네 아니 다 가서 그러고 치녀린 신기 지쳐서인 바던데 단 소재기 라이프 논타노라 계셔버와 저는 다 대솔 손노 따온도 메다부 코르델 손노 또야데 같이부지 저에 의해봐 근데 거는 히투기에서래
We can also think about how our own teacher, the Buddha, what first made him become a Dharma practitioner to take up the path of the Dharma was that he saw these sad facts about life concerning impermanence. That was the start of his Dharma practice. And we can understand this if we read his life story. So we can also understand this from that point of view.
아니 나름 속에 메타부 콜 손노 야보지 땅 데라 니힌다보지 니 아니 녀리네 건상 예바 차와이나 아니 몽보지 let go 조투기에서리 아니 지데 지제라 가보메바 차기에서리 되니 다 간갈리 초세 히로민두 소야게 손노지 레이에서리 되니 산 레레차 아니 치녀네 야보시 토반다고 다들 네스드서 그 옹기에서리 셔선 대인도 메타부 콜 손노 동야데 히로게 코다 nengo 차와인 바리
If we think about impermanence well, and if we find some certainty regarding impermanence, and if we also practice meditating on impermanence, this will allow us to let go quite a lot. We won't be so infatuated with the worldly dharmas anymore. We'll also be quite relaxed. We won't have so many concerns, so many things to worry about, and then we'll be able to practice the dharma really well. So it's really, really crucial to think about impermanence.
다 이나요 두손 미 몸보지 라버도 로현현인데 시자wan다 같은데 메다부 코르데 몸보 라셰와이나 아니 코조 히라 롤 만도네 셈바 마도와 근데 저긴도와 데라 마우스 코조 라긴도와 다 가시 코조게 라 펜타구이에나 치히에네 로 손은 좋아 똥투구이에나 다 메다부 코데 마헤롱게지 저기에로와 세상 다데츠 가보 예레다
But it seems like these days, a lot of foreigners, a lot of Westerners, and modern people don't really like talking about impermanence too much. But actually, if from the point of view of the teacher, you want to benefit someone, there's no choice but to talk about impermanence because that's what will change their minds. So it's a bit difficult.
대인도 페나 나조 콤바지 메힘바기에나 콤바디노르 메몽보지에나 아니 콤바디 메히 바긴두 라네 콤바기 잘로네 게 자나 여기레 게 마자나 여기레스 대화지레나 게 자나 여기레 라기로 가스나 게 자셰바이나 멤바사 콤바네 메카게 콤바네 마 대야기 거가 토네 아니 힘마기 비즈니스 처시 버와 다 대노신 가서 메타버스 게 자대와이나 미카게기데 엑셉조션에요 가르세 그리고 코알레 문테네 네메기바 치드네 송젠동기 고가 인킨다고 근데 운시반다고 근데 내수 저대 예로와
Furthermore, we can also think about the example of a burning house. If there's a burning house with a lot of people inside it, is it better to yell, "Hey, the house is burning," or not? It's better to say that it is burning, to shout loudly to those people inside that the house is burning, because then some people would be able to accept that fact and recognize that the house is in fact burning, and so save themselves from dying in the fire. And then, in the same way, then, um, if one speaks about impermanence, some people will be able to appreciate the message and they will be able to recognize the need to free themselves from the three realms of samsara.
오다 든든다고 레스로와 오다 되게 시동 메타버 코트소 시에 되니다 시제 nga주 nga루파 되게 플러버드 루세데 메타바 임바 아니 루텔라 페미지 현자시와 짜치부시네 나론 속기 시대제로 대세나다 텔라 촌다고 싫어 메비께จะ되긴도와 룬터 타와 타강 타두히 타마 메존 힘보 만지버 넘버 기데 냐반조와데 소소 지진 들도 침반제에서 해체버와 다 나조 몸보지 룰라페 미시 가보시기르다 루데 동와이나 둘로케 또와이나 칼로테 차와이나 룬코동 요 동와이나 차로동 다 루기 된다는 가서 강가 히오지 제이르 가보 히오시르 사치보 히오시르와 다 근데 시대들 hiran himbo ye mari tende sharin chopana bo kaye mar lute tabatembo kaye mari ko yo metabirongi tende jiresele da ludu kisungi yerita tujende ta metaba kandere sedu tene ngazo shitsadu lute mela yu shego waina ani thala chandu gires yona luso kagela shitsadu rode nimale togoyanda bo lun kudaya gawatende yeres tidu ene lude kombo chandu yeres tene yo kage glosola ta jansonda bo chugno luga yeres tene rude rundu yeres tene yo kage glosola pela soba tende la shagenda bo tesul tego yeres ene ko mezonwa chandu zobo hiwoji chandu yeres shezo da teso sono tonwa ina ko essence ndabo nyimbo ndabo choba shawi bandabo kanye maris tende res 다 넘바 지지도 셋 기버리다 제정 그 메일 떠고에는 소소소 톤도 그랬어 간가 아니 실로 도고에나 룽그 간가 톤도 그랬어 출유나 룬도 그랬어 소소소소 차운도에 진실대 이랬어 따바때 뭐 강에 마스 그 메타바리스 근데 임바 인자 대소 임바데 야부조로 하고와 셰셰네 아니 룰라 저기 기보셔야 돼 유튜브 지시고 그랬어 다들 잡을 라체네 아니 제네 아론 솔라 라우기로 대 인도 다 룰루 저기 시야에 말을 나와리.
Now, moving on to verse number 56. Uh, this verse speaks about how it applies this discussion of impermanence to the body in particular. Normally, we're very preoccupied with our bodies. We attach a great deal of importance to them. But actually, when you consider how the body is impermanent, there's not much use in treating the body in such a way. So the verse reads, "This body ends as ash, dry dust, or slime, and ultimately shit, no essence left. Consumed, evaporated, rotted down, thus know its nature, to disintegrate." So basically, we like our bodies quite a lot. If our bodies feel cold, we put some clothes on. If we feel hungry, we eat food. And if we start to feel hot, then we might turn on the fan. So there's no end to it, basically, pampering the body in that sense. But actually, the body is not reliable. It's not something stable. It has the nature of being completely impermanent. And so the verse is talking about ash, dry dust, or slime. After we die, in some cultures, our bodies are cremated. So our bodies might turn to ash. In some cultures, perhaps they're left out to be dried out by the sun, and then they turn into some sort of dust that is carried away by the wind. In some cultures, in some countries, they submerge bodies into water, and there they just rot and turn into slime. And then further on, some, like in Tibet, they cut up dead people's bodies and give them to animals, like birds. And then the body turns into something extremely disgusting. It turns into shit, actually, because after the animals eat it, it comes out the other end, so to speak. So um, there won't be anything left, no essence left. It'll be destroyed, actually. It says consumed, evaporated, rotted down. It might be consumed by fire, evaporated into thin air, or rotted down in the water. Its nature is to disintegrate. So basically, we shouldn't be so attached to our bodies.
달루두기 던데 라바라와티네 파발라기 라인도와 우마기자브노라 루댕은에 가론소기 다레스 루티 치드 가서 강아 히보지 뇨그레스 이나요 다요 천선 다부지그 가서 치드엘라 페제 동그레스 던데케지 히버와 아니 자세치부 히올로기 센주 손데 리우트서 노 라인도와 룰루 차바시야예 마르스 루데 메송베기 주리스 루데 메송베기 데브리스 루키 실렐 손노 토나요 레가 레돈 손노 토나 차바샤위 바지에 마리스 페나 나조 그 칼로 레 달테소 마제 빙엔돌라 쪼마 히보지레스 사차네 건성레 차두 쪼바 척인두스 데 루테 셰바레스 제가 달 루테 라 가보 샤리 초바 문두스 근데 깨자 뭐 히기로 다 테솔 손노 똥구예사로
So these are the words of Nagarjuna. Some other masters who speak about the body are also Aryadeva, who talks about how actually we should see the body as an enemy, because on account of having a body, we have to experience a lot of hardship. So we have to then make sure that we use the body for Dharma practice. Shantideva says in his Bodhicharya Avatara that we shouldn't be attached to the body because it's the cause of impurity. So before we eat something, for instance, like lentils and rice, dal and rice, these things look very pure and clean. But after we have eaten them and some time has passed, then the very same things turn into something very disgusting. And that's actually because of the body. The body did that.
오다 던데 라버레스 라이에 티니요 문테네 다카스 그러고 zuji ngepo chebo teso yo metaba reshaus. Teso metaba ina, ane soso ge lu 냥 춘주데 메타 바임바 다히에 마게바지 렌두스 티케제데 단다 지제 나지 나덴 바티 키긴도아 사동 룸보 간조 니마든 바웨 세빌루진 데도종 타와존 율루번 문주나 힌두 냥주 메다 미친 사스 다데 가르세두 페나 자체부 인케 사스 아니 페메시 템보 인케 리자보르라스 페미지 띵 사보 인케 아니 잔소 오션스 다 대소용 농가라 니마 돈다보지 하셰셰네 까반지피 까솔라 아니 강크지 메바텐데 차노기른 로기레스 다 대소라 강크지 고 메바 타야 존지 메바 차텐데 렌도기에나 테니 페미지 뇽추 인케 누바 멘케 나름 소위기 미기루 때도 메바 차네 가요 메바지 에니 그 저기 해봐 근데 내수지 우기 해봐 때까지 되게 막이 봤는데 지레샤스 대인도 다 텐데션에 아니 가서고 메다부고 되게 일
Now, moving on to verse number 57. This verse continues the discussion of impermanence and turns to considering how the very vast and sort of huge things in the world are also impermanent. And so, by comparison, our body is just something very small and fragile. So, we consider impermanence from this perspective. And the verse reads, "The ground, Mount Meru, and the oceans too, will be consumed by 7 blazing suns. Of things with form, no ashes will be left. No need to speak of puny, frail man." So it talks about how something extremely vast, like the earth, the ground, something extremely stable, like Mount Meru, and something extremely deep, profound, like the oceans. At the end of this eon, of this kalpa, 7 suns will blaze in the sky and will consume everything. And out of those things that have form, there's not even going to be any ash left. So everything would be completely annihilated. And then when all of these huge, vast things are going to be destroyed in this way, then what need to mention even that our small and fragile bodies are also going to be destroyed? They definitely will.
아니마 덴 하리세데 개바 가게 길라나 니마 덴 하야예 말이 니마데 후체르체르체르 나말레 니마 니바데 인다 후체 돌레트네 깨제키기레스 이나다 제센 렌다와키 니마 덴 하야예 바 깨제키네 니마 동보디 하운두 시도 농긴 제텐 칸테소 친도기레스 니마 니바데 하운두 추도 인테테소 친도기레스 니마 숨바데 하운두 소도 소 만리바 테솔레 쇼잉 초테소 메바 차기레스 텐데 고네 자네 애니케테키에 디에레스
La, niemand tambo de rendawa ki somba de yanyu suna
란다와기 니마 덴 예반다 보지 셴네 데와 자네 히예레
laza.
니마 동보데게 신지된도 노기 생지데소 진도기레스 애니 니마 니바데게 초도 추텐데소 메바른도기레스 칸도기레스
Mm,
애니 니마 숨바데게 초 만레바도 아니 초 만레바 텔레쇼 초 유볼라서바 칸도기레스 든데게 지기르다
laza. Then regarding these 7 sons, some scholars say that actually we shouldn't take it as 7 separate sons, but it's rather like the sun, the one sun that we have, is going to increase in strength and heat until it resembles the heat of seven suns combined. Um, and then the Sakya scholar Rendawa, on the other hand, says that we can think about it in terms of 7 days. Right?
Nima den,
Laza. So,
nima ndamda den khagirisi yisar.
oh, Laza.
7 day la yi salamari.
Ah, Laza, Laza. Oh, got that. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. So Rendawa says that there are seven suns, and he makes a division then for what happens when each sun rises in the sky. So they rise like one at a time. So when the first sun rises, then the entire outer container world and the inner content of sentient beings will be burned, consumed. When the second sun rises, then all of the water, all the oceans and the sort of lakes will be evaporated. When the third rises, then all the rivers and streams that come from those will dry up and so forth, and then it sort of goes in that way.
A jezen rendawa ye heating kindewa de yabunda boji ziyere. Karsana jezen rendawa de jezen jambu yungi nontu yungi jetsonka baki gegin rawa. Jetsonka ba jezen jambu yungi nontu yungi de gegin zotu yena. Ani da kong tende ke gongzo de ki tiga jo ndewa de ngazo yishi shena ndi yesare. Jezen rendawa kindewa de enji tolo yotsa yesare.
Um, Rendawa's commentary on the letter to a friend is considered a very good commentary. We can think of how his student, Tsongkhapa, is considered to be an emanation of Manjushri. So if Rendawa could be the teacher of an emanation of Manjushri, that means that he must be quite an excellent teacher himself, right? And I think this commentary has been translated into English.
Ngaso teni tsije da ngaju ngaje pati ta soso ge pumbo ngabote 5 ege get te so yong eni metaba yibi koji heyere ta misashine teda deko meta dame te shami gemi nemi tele tus kowa chuhi nimbo meba las mincho cheji tuni shuan zes sedu da kondo tse metaba yimba lu metaba yimba ja chewa sa metaba yimba ton chewa ri jabure ra metaba yimba ting chewa janso la so metaba yimba kanga he chadu tene ta soso ge gela yebe ge pumbo ngabo teso yong metaba yimba da me ba yimba ta tomba yimba ta tende teso ride yeres shezon te indu soso ge pumbo teso la shanken don genken don ene soso ge pumbo teso minji ne taba ne toba la soba ta tende ye mares tende yimba indu ta kowa se de pumbo ngala he undu tene 다 코아세야 돼요. 다 따바템 보예 말이 추히 님보 미바도 지바르스도 깰라도 지바르스 깰라 돈다기레스 예다 깰라데 님보 메라 빠바 다 덴데레스 셰존 다 덴데 임바데 자보 초롱게 하코와 셰셰네 애닌 코알레 셈바데 쪼네 코알레 탄데로데 예토바 민중데 젤시토바 덴데 시야데서 다 같이 우레스 덴데 라송하시
Now, the previous verses have already discussed how, in general, human life is impermanent, our bodies are impermanent, the great earth, high mountains, and the deep oceans are impermanent as well. And now it turns to discussing how the five aggregates are also impermanent, sort of singling them out. And so the verse reads, it's all impermanent, devoid of self. So if you're not to stay there, refugeless and helpless, drag your mind away, O king, from plain like samsara, which has no core. Um, so it's the verse here teaches that the five aggregates are impermanent. They are devoid of a self. They don't have a real self to them, and they're also empty. Therefore, there won't be any protector for them, or for you, rather. Um, there's nothing that can make them remain, basically. Nothing that can make them last longer. So then the advice is, O king, divert your mind from samsara. So here, the five aggregates are likened to samsara. Um, divert your mind from this. Take your mind off considering this as so important because it's like a banana tree, a plantain tree, or like a banana itself. It has no essence. There's no real solid core to it. It's actually um, empty. There's no point. So then just leave the samsara, leave cyclic existence.
아트제 아주 나그바데기 나론 속에 밀루 다 단조세 제라 밀루데 제바도 봐봤지 치 두발라 거가 차순 예바데 베자 야부 똥구르스 데 토깔레 커보이르스 베자 야부 똥나 펜도 제보이르스 이나 데 메타바 기롱긴지르스 다데 베 토네요 기케기 예사레 잔소 지네 냐히 부가동 루바 테바웨 좀 돈돌레 미니 제도 가웨 명옹게 당시 셰베 덴데 침반제스 단데라 타바타 타중기 페레스레 단데지 예나세 라고 이르다 타바 타중기 페레스네 단데 센주가솔라 진도 예로와 셰존 좀빌리 강가 잔손다보지 저 셰네 아니 잔소 디노라 루바 토이데라 다게나데 미롱와지예 아니 요 잔소 디노라 냐히 쿵예죠 당가조 힘 모두 구기로와 아니 냐히데 하로 노데조 롱기 파셰 노네 로로네 숑라서바 텐데셰 데니 루바제 로 자레기 손네요 추그 칼지우 다 텐데레스 제존다 텐데게 냐히데 게 보가노라 루바 밀로와 로 자리설야 온케데 디논 줄렌 택구나 다 깔레카우 히오지에로 와셰바르다 제존 텐데게 페텔레 정 돈도네 타네 아니 미루된 토고아이나 텔레종 빼 텔레종 깔레카야지리스 근데 임바 인도 대소 내수 대소 하고와 셰네 미오 자부 초롱기 다 단다 미루된 데 토데 예두 제바도 법이 루된데 아니 때 배제 돈에 치야보지 돈에 데 미루된 데 단도 예바지 미니프 예바지 소시야데 다 냉거레스 데라버
Verse number 59 talks about our precious human body, which is extremely hard to obtain. But if you use it well, it'll be very, very beneficial, but it's impermanent. And so here in this verse, it's explained with an example. And the verse reads, harder, harder still than that a turtle chance upon the opening in a yoke upon a great and single sea is rebirth as a human after rebirth as a beast. So heed the sacred Dharma king and make your life bear fruit. So this is just like a hypothetical example of how we can understand how rare it is to achieve a precious human life, precious human body. And this is also discussed in Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, the way of the Bodhisattva. So the example goes, or the hypothetical goes, that if suppose the entire world were a really huge ocean, and within this ocean was a blind turtle swimming about at random. On the surface of the ocean is a wooden yoke with a small opening, and the yoke is blown from west to east and from south to north and so forth with no direction. The blind turtle only comes up every 100 years, once every 100 years. So the chance that when the blind turtle pops up his head, it would um, go through this wooden yoke is extremely small. It's infinitesimally small. And similarly, it's extremely difficult, it's extremely rare to obtain a human body. And here it's talking about how, compared with taking birth as an animal, it's extremely common for us to take birth as an animal again and again. It's even more rare than the turtle example to be born as a human compared with being an animal. So Nagarjuna says, O king, make your life meaningful, make this life bear fruit. That's the message of the verse here.
그래서 단데 손주 선비 제발한 주비 가수라 시동 메일로된 제발도 봐봐 토와라 벤디케 제발와 단달루두기 히티노라 돈로네 추차네 메일로된 토야야 라갈레카고 히보레스 벤디케 제발와 세상 다 돈로를 시와len스나 아니 치두이 고가데 메바 인도 다 갈레카고 조여라 메일로된 토발라 용냐완다 던델레스와이나 운단다 주네 형 메일로된 통계데 예사라 페나 ngazo lojuji hiya yewa tanda karse pomu ki tangji se ji hiya yewa zamu pomu ki tangji se ji shenju nong li yero ta kong ama le kanga te shene ama kangola juda shune doya ki nime la nyawa le shene ene ngola te kone sono yabo tang shene ene layu li shesu senda o jera ta karina tende tezemendo ta konje ta tenreke gone tanda ludu ki hiya songa jiricho.
So here, this example in the Bodhicharyavatara um, is just used in general to illustrate how it's extremely difficult to obtain a human body. But here in Nagarjuna's letter to a friend, it's talking about how from going to the animal realm and being born there again and again, it's extremely difficult to then again be born as a human being. Um, as an animal, you have no opportunity to practice Dharma. But we could probably also apply this to the hell realms. There are probably those who go from the hell realms and up to other realms as well. But then this would be extremely rare. So there's a story in the Bodhicharyavatara of um, a son who um, basically he gets angry at his mother and he kills her, and then he goes to a hell realm, and there he suffers quite a lot. Did Jackie Nyashing Kurne Karere
Not really kills, no.
Ale
거기 donja shoson amala.
Downchasu Lana Down
주다게
Ale
ama gitachoron ki papa ta mahena disarita.
Lasa Lasa.
O ta chidon tindero.
So
Ta
anyway,
chiche oh,
just to briefly finish off, he just kind of um, he suffers a lot in the hell realms, but then he regrets it. He thinks about it, and then he's able to be born in the high realms. So it just kind of illustrates how that movement happens. Lasa
ta chiche tujupahi milu yaboji tode yene te peshe yaboji matong peshe lokaji tongo ayena ta te mide kuba hiwores tikeche dike yesarta. Kongi sene rinchi tepa yins nishu shoba jiba tewe chons kongi miru shene dipa tas jiba tene chera lumbo las tande peden jani hiyere luduk ta mi kongi la juse le toga choge plate ndawo jiye eni tela rumbo je iyo shuru ki taja go jiye ne eni te peshe tombi kikaso la kogi shuba shusanda wo she soba lusanda wo she dustbin da wo ze ga wa ina tati mide pe kubara was ta ko full hiwoji chagiro was ina tele 좀 kuba cheyaji yeris te karsedu mi luten te tone re dewala ani gewa madune diba choju ze dewa ina tine segi ne dustbin la peje tonki tele 좀 kuba cheyaji chagiris o tende res 제가 대설 쏘는 동시에 다 미루된데 배제 야보질 동토 와기 레가시 주도 쏘는 동지데 요 냉거지 쳐서 그래서 루둑데 라와레.
Now, moving on to verse number 60, Nagajuna speaks about how um, after having obtained this very rare human body, if we don't use it well, then we are very, very stupid, actually. And so the verse reads, more stupid yet than one who throws some slops into a golden vessel all bejeweled is he who's gained a precious human birth and wastes it in an evil, sinful life. So here Nagarjuna is being very direct and using an example, illustrating his point. So if there's someone who has something like a golden plate studded with jewels, and then uses that golden plate, which is extremely precious, as some kind of a dustbin, as a place to throw your garbage, to throw your leftovers and your shit, that person is an idiot. That's a very foolish person. But who is a bigger idiot than someone who uses a golden plate like this? Who is a more foolish person? That's actually someone who doesn't use their human life well. So the point is that it's extremely important to use this human life well, not just wasting our time on non-virtue. So this is Nagarjuna's advice.
다 드송그 두제라 미주 최고 드소 강가 kuba hiwoji chogiru da kasana midju chebu kakege soso ki tsoba tongsa te seiki zoga jo seiki 제 자가지고 근데 얘로 와다. 이나 midju chebu de koru mise de mil pen toyanda bodu chi doyanda bodu ne beje tongi marota.
Nowadays, Kimpula says, I think there are some really stupid rich people, because, they make their entire bathroom, their toilet seat entirely out of gold. They use their resources like that, but they don't use their lives to help other people or to practice Dharma. So what to say about that,
Ta
right?
tindero to so good to say ta tindere. Ta deso kejo deso migi nalondo el kale kaburo ta. Te ludu sangi de koron kubare shan de kejo higin to sejiro. Ta ludu ngazo kubare ngazo ludu kubare se ta tinde shine doyarindo. Ta chije tochu rechi pa hit karse gurugo jabu chorunla mi luten chebado papa kibuji tode yeris tade peche yabuji tong toya shia desu ta kache buru silitinde xie yesarwa tumbar chubi yuna neba tong shebu tambala ne tenba tong danyin le me nye yon seno je kolo chimbo yini chela nga sitinde la shebari ta te karla ya sidu ta chorunla kolo nushin ene yeden za chebo yi ganga de jabu chorunla yeris Shazan ta te yewi ka de la ani pecha yabu ji tong tu gu gires. Pe na shinda la kolo ye wani na ani shinda kolo yabu yenke de shene kawan do guna kanga mebi tone le tu giro was. Te no she choro la kolo chibo ye de yedu ani soju ji kompu doyanda bo dong. Tinin koa le thai gilega shea de zula le labu hiu ji chode yeri. Shazan ta te thola mandwa ji shigu gires le. Tini kolo tombo de tumbi yuna nepa seya de. Re, tate kala sedu chorong tambi chi yesa la shewa long yeris. Chorong la chi duwi koka yeris. Chorong la chi lochong shi koka yeris ya na wata tinde. Ene shebu tamba la ne tenba sedu tini chorong gewe kini yabu tinde le tenya to yeris. Chi ji chobo yabu tinde. Ene sumba de danyi leme sedu, ene chorong ge somba yindu ko do thea ki chachin de yeris. 아니 녀요 센노스도 shewa 녀마 나서 저런 게 센노 건성지 서 셰네 아니 단다 강가 부선수바 예바데 차가 같은데 리스 세상 콜로 침보 이게서야 돼 강가 잡부 저런 두스 나스는 둘라로 다 대인도 대하고와 셰셰네 아니 다 마음바 소제 터바시야라 아니 배제 야부지 땅셰네 근데시 구그레스 라바
Continuing on with the topic of the precious human life, verse 61 speaks about how it's extremely important to use this body well. And the verse reads, to dwell in places that befit the task, to follow and rely on holy beings, aspiring high with merit from the past. These four great wheels are yours for you to use. So Nagajuna is telling the king that you have four special qualities, which are like wheels, and you have to make sure to use these. It's as if a chariot, if it has four wheels, then wherever one would want to go, using that chariot, one could go there without any problems. So similarly, with these four sort of positive conditions, you could say you can go wherever you want. You could achieve the level of Buddhahood, or you could achieve freedom from samsara. So that's the reason why we should reflect on this. So the first to dwell in places that befit the task means to be born in a place where the Dharma is present, where one has the opportunity to study and practice the Dharma. Second, to follow and rely on holy beings means, you know, Nagajuna is telling the king that you have had the opportunity of meeting good Dharma teachers, good Dharma friends, spiritual friends. Aspiring high means that you can actually practice um, and achieve the results just in accordance with your wishes. You can get to wherever you want, essentially. And with merit from the past means that it's the king's previous merit that has allowed for his current very fortunate situation to arise. So therefore, having all of these four um, is sort of pointed out to the king, like, you have these, and they're there for you to use, and you can, with them, make sure to use them in a positive way to reach freedom. So that's what you should do, O king.
그래서 단데 나zo 연들 손을 똥 거야지 저기다 나zo 단다 가스고 나로서 치 예사질 시와롱이래 아니 개개요 태이래 아니 치가 돈데바 도 초반다고 지 저이로 아니 치 드와 그 거가 예바지 나 센너서 거버디 기탄던 레부티 저데 이로 단데서 때제 투진데서 장깔에 가보 이로 단단 장데 예바 인도 다 소소게 에 바예바 시네 아니 고갈래 히바시 뜻도 단낸 거 저기이다.
We should also think about this in our own lives, how we have been born in a place where the Dharma is present. We have met Dharma teachers. We can do our practice, whatever we're practicing, and we will get a result which is in accordance with the Dharma practice that we do. But we have to be very careful and really be conscious and mindful to make use of this opportunity, to make proper use of the opportunity, because it's hard to get this kind of opportunity again and again.
근데 인데 까담비기 라마지 슝바레 싱하와 후야지 콩 미세텔라 니 쿠기 메바 임바레 아니 공르기 로마데서 니 쿠나 여기를 zubo trading dagir sedu any con ni ko ya gitu zai mundu sele dan dendegi ko de solo sono tone any con ge precious of human life de solo consultation ne kan con ni ma ku barwa ta nga zo yo con no shin zo ma zo na con ge zo a constant bo zo gu yere ma do ni nga zo ta ya bo hu ge ma de chi do na tunde ta ban ju ge ma re ngune shewa yina.
In the past, there was a Kadampa Lama named Chengawa. In his whole life, Chengawa he would never lie down to sleep. And his own teachers would actually tell him, his own lamas would say, hey, you better get some rest. You better lie down to sleep once in a while. It's good for your body. It's good for your health. But then Chengawa would reply, I just have no time. I can't find any time to sleep. And this is because he contemplated the preciousness of human life. And so he found that he really couldn't waste any time on sleeping, none at all. We should think about this too, actually. Even if we can't practice exactly like him, we should contemplate the preciousness of human life and really try to use our time well.
이나 다당 두송 가서 opposite cho이로 다 가서 두송 배셔도 못인데 그 된다라 아니 그게 말아 챈들래가 랭기 뭐 보이라 시작돼서라 다 데려와. 다 데리 간저 가서 오버즈트 쳐 셔버와 다 가르스나. 다 대기 메타비 깨져도 야부 마고 와라. 다가 배셔 긴동기 말이 미세데 따바리 히보지 예상으로와. 문에 셔와이나 배셔 긴동기 미세 긴동기 말이 다 손으로 오다 동시 친거 버와.
But now these days, it seems like everyone is acting the complete opposite from Jengawa. In foreign countries, it seems like people to get rich, to get more money. That's why people stay up all night, why they never rest, why they never lie down to sleep, right? So we seem to think that money is extremely important. We never have enough, and therefore we use all of the time of our life on this. But actually, it should be the opposite. We should think that I never have enough time. This life is so important. The time is not enough. That's the real resource. That's how we should think.
오다 듣는 줄 버려와. 셰조 다티 인도 아니 까담빌라마 단다 돈나 보생기 준라 롱르 통바 돈나 바스. 블랙페이스 까담빌라마치. 콩기 미세 데라 게모 니마도 코메 송이에와. 게모 니마도 마그와 가린라나 콩근 코아데 강아 히보지 예발라 소노 똥셴네 아니 콩 게모 호니 코야 그 준세 문도 송로와. 다 게모 니데 찌 찌찌게 찌기 찌찌 루테소 소셴네 찌찌기 아론실레 페제 똥두 단 코아세야 데레스 미지 강아지 미지기 에 롱고네 페제 똥야르스 게모지 코인스 찌데 애니 코론 그로바 제사로 데히 코론 그조 마토바지 조토야기 타키세 우주자데두 땅아 그로바데 미쿠반두 손레 게모 코인스 이나 셈바 부네도 호메스 호야 주누문둘라로 다 드네다오라 드네다오 소노 똥셰와이나 에요 겐중데 데레 투예사로
네, 게모쇼야기 담보디 가래 양식수나
땅아주 미 카게 예로 다미 카게 소소 그 강아 히보지 제 베샤 소소 베샤 똥르디 히바지 똥로기로 와
가래? 알레 셴바기 배짱네 아 라스
덴코 게모 호라타 이나 티게 시여로 아주 문에 게모 마로와 쿠바 레스 안에 게모 호로
라스 데니 니바데
니바데 코노 로바 제사라 아니 코노 그조 토야 메조 길라요 조야라 우투 갸텐데 셰도 아니 나기 로바 네미 쿠바 진두세 게모 지코 인라레
아 라스 에
이나 게모 문에 마레 다드소
나스 로파디기 게몰롱야기 탑체 담바레 루파이
다 타힐라나 코미 쿠바 예사라 코노 조 토야 메조 지나요 조 데코 셰도와
아 라스 um so that's how it is. In the past there was another Kadampa Lama whose name was Donakpa Langritangpa, which means black
블랙
face.
페이스
Yeah. Um, and this was because he never smiled, he never laughed. And when people asked him about this, then he said that I see no reason to smile in samsara. It's just full of suffering. But actually, in his life, he smiled or laughed twice. So once was when he reflected on the fact that some people they use so much effort and they spend their whole lives trying to get money and trying to get rich basically. But in the end, when they pass away, all the riches that they have gathered up, all their money is used up by other people. So seeing this, he laughed. But it wasn't a genuine laugh. It wasn't a genuine smile. It was more like laughing about how tragic the situation is. And the second time was about how one of his friends was quite a hopeless person, quite a incapable person, but still tried to sort of go around acting as if he was a big deal. Um, and so he laughed at how his own friend was behaving like an idiot, like a fool, basically. But he never really had a genuine smile. No real laugh ever occurred in his life. So we can also think about this, and it'll probably help us with renunciation.
Tēndu ngā tsō pēnā kōi ki nime te gāni nyōle shiku dudu lōru tōngpa dōng nāpō ki shēwa nōshi shiku re se kēche te xie ye sare. Tāte shi tōngi kēmbo rowa.
Laza. So the idea is that we should think about the faults of samsara like this Kadampa teacher, Donapo, the black-faced one who thought about how terrible samsara is so much that he just never smiled his whole life. But it'll be difficult to find someone today who can really practice that way.
Tēne kādāmbi lāma chi shiwa re sheba re karo gānchū lāya chi. Ani karo gānchū ke medabu kol sono tōng ye sarwa. Ani kōng tsāng rabu dede rwa. Ani tsāng dedu tsāng tsāng jimba tōng ka shilo nrogu rwa. Ani tsāng desa ne jimba tōng sa paru tila shintōng tsemo ye ju je sarwa, zengu rama ye ju chi. Ani maa rodu tele togi ye rwa, ta te bache zogi ye ra. Ani kogi hidong de che na so, ao ta che kasi che nga jimba tōng sa ne ya uya ye me kanshis. Ani maa roya ye ma kanshis, tende se ne hidong jil sono tōng se ne metabi toba jil she songa kejanda u hie ye rwa. Che zang nga zo foundation yeke nole metabi kol sono tōndu kadambi lama karo ganchu ki sono tōng hana chi Google se hie ye rwa.
There was also the Kadampa Lama Karak Gomchung, who always contemplated impermanence. At one point, he was staying in retreat, and while in his cave, he sometimes had to go out to pee. But then, obstructing his path out from the cave, there was a thorny bush. So every time he would try to go outside, he would get pricked by the thorns. But then he would always think of him to himself exiting the cave, you know, who knows if I'll ever go back in after I've had my pee. So there's really no time for me to cut down the bush. And then similarly, when he was going into the cave, he never cut it down either because he thought, who knows if I'll ever go outside again. So when it comes to contemplating impermanence, we should try to be like Karak Gomchung.
Shazan ta te indu kadambi lama kake ke gonda ma nyadu popa de ka bune gao gao gires. Junsen karsa du soni popa peshe tonga ki tuze yemi kakin se le ta medabil sono tong gires. Dega noshi Sri Lanka teso la eni taba teso soba soka hu se ke tondu ngazo ki peba noshi kanga te dongi maris. Metabal legin du da choron so soba soka hu se tende la gires. Ta tende da wo sono tong le shiku ge sarwa.
The tamadi sui chegre.
Tadambe lama gake ge gonda ma nyaga la popa de ka bune gao ge sarwa. De kare se du soni popa ya ka shene peshe tonga yeme ha kogi maris. Da metabal sono tong yeres. Tende da ushi yeres.
Laza, then the sopa soya ki chig.
Soba tsodu ngazo nonju kanga dongirwa zinra tsodu.
Laza.
Ina Sri Lanka loso la kanga
Ale
dugi
Sri Lanka
mares.
la. Oh,
Traba desu show metaba legin du das lagi res. Te ngaron
la.
so lagi ra mai metaba legin du se lagi ra semba mai metaba legin du. Ta deso dongon da burin do.
So similarly, more along this vein, some of the Kadampa lamas of the past would take their bowl that they eat from and turn it upside down every night, thinking, who knows if I'll wake up still alive tomorrow. Um, some in Sri Lanka, so in monasteries, when the monks are called to the assembly hall to do some ritual or some puja, usually in Nepal or in Tibet, they ring a gong. But in Sri Lanka, apparently, what they do is they simply tell the monks, hey, you better go inside and do puja. Life is impermanent, instead of using the gong, right? And there's also this saying, this instruction, which goes, don't be distracted. Impermanence is coming. So this is really like a pith instruction.
Shesa metaba kol de sono mo botong ge ta pena ngazo lo jashi de ye na se ngaron so gi misela 80 years ye na ta ngazo chuse kase ji nduta na nima kase ji nduta na ngazo la paji khabu tongro sunju floji ma do ye maris gonda ngazo nya de ro shesa khabu tongro sunju de tuze tundu hiwoji ro 다데 하고와이나 된 선바 쪽이라 개노 제부 효지 레기레 되니 에 디바 마조와 도 치조고 소노도 레기레 제가 다 메다바 소노도 메다바 뇽리시야데 간제야데 타히로 nengo 초이르
Impermanence is something we need to return to and reflect on again and again. If we suppose that our lifespan is going to be 80 years, we can check how many hours is that actually going to be? How many hours are left? How many days are left?
데
Lazo. Um, Actually, if we really look at it, there's only going to be something like 3,000 days. Um,
no 30,000 days
30,000 days. 30,000 days. That's all.
less than that if you calculate
Yeah. Less than 30,000 days. Um, and also, as Kimpula mentioned, less than that, because at night we sleep, right? So when we think about this, this makes us feel quite sad. And then it makes us feel a bit scared. And it'll also lead us to not want to engage in any non-virtue. And we'll feel inspired to practice Dharma.
제가 근데 당이만가 토론토 란도로와 토론토 란도도 되는 가서 ngokhibaji ngazo changchang chin shebaro ani ngazo metab kol keje te hedu ani tanda keje de hero ani tanda de keje hedu ani choga de loson cheme de la fon tanso ta ngazo kanga hiwoji ja ngazo hiwoji zo de na choyesa mari ngazo lo jashi dewa ina ani nima tongro sunju chema do mundu ani ngazo kari sigurulane ke loson fon tang de zo so 제가 그 선반 좋아 친소 그 로송 손노 동기 투소 제가 메타바 될 빼미시 신라 치부 예사래
That's how it is. Once Kempala says he went to Toronto and he spoke about impermanence to some friends there, um, sort of going over the same points that we're discussing right now. And immediately, so there was a man there. The man picked up the phone and called his wife and said, "Hey, what are we doing? Why are we working so much? What are we doing with our life? If we're going to be 100 years old, there's only
80
So,
years old.
Lazo, if we're going to be 80 years old, there's only so little time left. So he really had a change of heart immediately, just from hearing about impermanence the one time. So this shows that it really has a lot of blessing. Thinking about impermanence is very powerful.
Ta de indu nga zo me da bu ko de le nyole ya bo le ya she la ka dam bi la ma te so ge ka shi te so lo ka dam bi la ma te so lo ju te so lo she wa na ni pen to chen bo ye res.
It's also really helpful if we really want to learn how to practice reflecting on impermanence properly, to read the life stories and the teachings of the Kadampa Lamas.
Ko da ten de da ina ka dam bi la ma ni lo so te she wa na tong bo hi wo cha ge da ko zo chen de le tong ge lo tang ge le tong ge jo jong la gi re che le tong she ga na ni tong bo cha ya ma de me re da. Nga so teni da ci je tuju reni ba de ta de hi lama gewi hini le ten de nengo res te ke yir da gewi hini ten ba chomba che yonso zoba to ba sun de shir shebu tamba ten ji jawala ten radu shu wa shiwa tos sedu da gase go kolo yi she so ti no shebu tamba ten ya gegin ten ya de nengo res gegin le ton nengo kar sedu chomba sheba sedu chomba sena tabal kogiere mochala sheba sena taba toji gi ju chi nyolin shia del kogiere shezo chi nyolin shile taba to toate gewi shini de la tenne ongires des soje joni de sunyeres shezo tende imba indu gewi shini shibu tamba ta ni yabo chongken gewi shini yabo de sole tenya shiju de ta nengores pena gewi shini soje jamden de la 카리부도 몽구지 보듯이 텐션에 애니 것도 다 잡아 차레스 아니 내가 노신 소무티마도 잡고 마시다 돼서 소재 점된데 텐션에 애니 게비 편도 디비 니밀라서 봐 hé네 애니 시바에 봐 전에 다 잡아 차서서 로주 뭐마 해서 어떻는다 뭐 뭐예요 그래서 게비 신이 땡지 낸 거를 나와
So now, moving on to verse number 62, we'll speak a little bit about how it's important to rely on a virtuous friend. Um, so the verse reads, "The virtuous friend in whom to place your trust has brought pure conduct to perfection," said the Lord. So follow holy beings, many are they, who relied upon the Buddhas and found peace. So we discussed these four wheels, right? Among them is meeting a teacher. So relying on a teacher is extremely important. To achieve liberation is something that comes only after having met and followed the instructions of a qualified teacher. Holy beings, spiritual teachers are then extremely important for us. We can think about how Shariputra and Maudgalyayana met the Buddha and they followed his teachings, and then they reached the level of arhathood. And there are others as well that we have discussed that met the Buddha and then very quickly became
like
arhat.
angulimala
Angulimala, Raza, and then became arhats.
단데
Raza.
시기라마 시기휘니 때야 된 거레스 라와린도와
Who is talking about the chi, yamena che,
오토
Raza,
게휘니시
the outer teacher, the outer lama is very important. That's what this verse is telling us.
야 단데게 티제니데 말로고는 디사레 단데 레라본다 로버타완진도 돈로도 이다 니도 냐와시와도 자위 까메바도 탕고도 슬라로셰도 랭히 꾸바니스 라세 세리라동 고요롱와니 셰와지기 메콘네 제보스 데도탄 나 콤바 셰네니 셰와도 발레도 메반제슬 단데기 메캄비기 네제네 셰나 치 제와도 코카 예마스 메캄비 네 데라탄다 자부초로 타데 예리스 메캄비 네라 셰와 롱예 마리스 컴비 치두비 코카 예발라 셰와 롱예리스 Te hakowa shene yonjo maungpa kowa li shewa malibi chidula tanda chi gewa duya la bechen shene diligent shiya tisu ta nengo resi li ta mikambi ne je se te ta tene ma rinpa kintu landwa lota jili shewa to tundul shewa liya to yidal shewa liya la suwa ta jabu de deshi zombo de jila lota ye marawa sengashi ke lingirwa ani tundol shewa liya mari nyawali shewa liya mari yidal shewa liya mari ani soji jitemba mesali shewa liya mari yu tanko pena gesu do gelu mesala suwa tele shewa liya marwa ani kashik lumba dabul shewa liya marwa ani konkak kuba choy marwa seson te du mekambu ne jel tashos ta komba reshos chi duala koka yeba reshos te hakowa sheshene ta maungpa yongjo kowa la mutene sheme gibi ki chidula tanda chi doya la beze shiru ki sheya de kachi uris la war. O da de tsama diri.
Now we'll just read verse 63 and 64 together because they're quite easy and I think self-explanatory mostly. To be reborn with false beliefs, or yet as animals or pretas or in hell, deprived of Buddha's words, barbarians in borderlands or reborn dull and dumb, or born among the long-lived gods, of these 8 defective states that give no opportunity, you must be free, and finding opportunity, be diligent to put a stop to birth. So the king, the Chizampo, um, Nagarjuna is pointing out how you're free from the 8 unfree states which give no opportunity to practice the Dharma. You have this kind of freedom. So then you must be diligent in practice. The 8 unfree states are taught here in the first verse. So the king doesn't have wrong view, right? He accepts past and future lives. He's not an animal. He's not born in a borderland where you can't practice the Dharma. Like, for example, maybe these days we could say that a Muslim country would constitute an unfree state in this sense. But basically, he's free from these unfree states. He has that kind of freedom and the leisure, the kind of free time to practice. So now Nagarjuna is advising him, you must practice Dharma, be diligent in practicing Dharma so that you won't have to be born again and again in the future.
O da de ko ngaron sola yon la yirta ngazo tanda chi doya koka chason yenki diri de yerwa ta ngazo mekambu ne jel ta ne ngazo chi doya la kamba duze yeba de yerwa ta deli ngazo sono yaboji tangu yeri teni tele sono yaboji tang she wa ina ten ngazo ni khulon ye mari cha thulon ye mari ta ngazo chi dugu yeri ngol memba wa ina yo te pa meba mazo ne chi doya de dombo zo go ya da tende uye resele ta kadam lama de su he yirwa shezon ta peshos live de la embassy ki wo zo gu ye ba te ta ngazo la so ari ta.
This is something we have to think about too. We have the opportunity to practice Dharma. We have the time to practice Dharma. So we have to think about this well. We have to think about these 8 unfree states and how our current opportunity is so precious. We have to think about this really well. If we do, then we'll find no time for sleeping, lying about, drinking tea. If our head is on fire, the Kadampalamas would say, we have to put a stop to that first. There's no time for idling around or for other kind of distractions. So this actually applies to us as well.
세상 다테 인도 나저 로도 너기 세지 해예와 단조니까 고 레전드 고 코아 니미 고 세미다 고 다단다 데라 세미다 고don 아니 단조니까 고데 루두 케소와 다데서 나저 소노 야보 똥구이로 로도 너기 세두 나저 로 네게티브 때 포지티브 로야시알라 타힌다고 데 예예레스 다데라 셰바로 세상 당가저 치바 야보지 차구기에나 데로 메 야보지 차구기에나 데 이볼을 쏘는 번에 같이 쳐이르다.
So there's something called the four thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma, which are the impermanence of, or sorry, the preciousness of human life, impermanence, the defects of samsara, and karma. So now in these few verses, we've discussed the first two of precious human life and impermanence. If we want to be a good Dharma practitioner, if we want to be good human beings, good people, we have to really think about these very well, consider them very carefully.
세상 다 논주 베나 사자다 오지나 런데 뇽레 신기 데소게 for foundation 데소라 specials of human life 다 우기라요 다와 예세지 소노 똥예리 다 텐데시네 뇽레 신네 데니 로든 조안도 예사로
The four foundations, dawa shiki rinla.
마리 단다 땅아주 사자기 로솔로 단다 배라 아주 zonsola 사자기 치 런데 뇽레 시사기 리티트 센데지에로와 아니 고조게 런데 사기 로솔라 강긴도와 세상 동보 논송 그꼴라 헤두 냔도 꼴 헤두 냔도 그노라 단다 포 파운데이션 테예로와 디니 디노를 빼나 pressures of human life 다부 끼라요 다와 진이질 쏘는 동인도와
Dawa kaze?
다와 니솔라
Um, Normally in Sakya, when practitioners prepare themselves for practicing Lamdre, there's something called the four foundations. And in Tibet, in Dzongsar, where there's a retreat center where people practice Lamdre for 3 years, the time is divided in such a way that the preliminaries, which includes these four thoughts that turn the mind, one spends several months on this. So just thinking about the preciousness of human life, practitioners might contemplate that for something like 2 to 3 months. So in the course of that time, one could imagine that the mind really changes.
다시 건도 라바 노시 pressures of human life 데 폭갈에 가고 임바데 짜치고 임바데 나조기 단다 히로 응고치기 말이 단다 까담빌라마 싱한와 긴고체인도와 콩근고체바 노시 나조 근고체야 다시 시구예사로와
It's probably like this, that the preciousness of human life that we've just been discussing is extremely difficult to realize. Actually, we don't understand it. Someone like Chengawa, the Kadampa Lama, he understood it.
데인도 로드 나기데 같이 붙지기래 고 토몬와기 common for foundation 라도 테라와다 뇽레시 군난다 Mahayana nyoli shigunanda, songa doji tiba nyoli shigunanda, lodo nagi tele yaboji majubayina, any nyoli yinda deso yabo ugi marese. Ta kede he yere, ta chebo cho yere.
Therefore, these are extremely important, and they're called the common four foundations because whether you're interested in practicing Theravada, Mahayana, or secret mantra, Vajrayana, any other practice won't go well if you don't have these foundational practices down.
Oda tende re shorowa. Ta tewanda wo yena, any kama kayendu, any ngazo shumage, kaya de sade de la re, tutse chipare.
Lasa, lasa. Okay, so that'll be it for today's session. Next week we'll meet on Saturday instead of today's Sunday, but it'll be the same time. If there are any questions, then we have a few minutes of time. Oh yeah, there are some questions. Kimberla chikdo tanda ngaso example lingla korang kowa nyemik tong kaleka po yingyu mare ngaso dungepe mambu yorwa ta mangro yore tene korang mitsama ki gyunor korang nyendraf la pe gagire ini an chikche na di toya kaleka po yimpa di yinsa mare ini an drempa majeya ini mixe ki susu rangi korang netandi yapo yebe kapsu drempa majeya di kaleka po chadu yesare nganazu ki tungen yapo denso ta yang mitapa red giores ani ini an tarong ngaso sempe nang nyamon pa tu nga denso tarong yode pa te tongwa tang tene sempa jowa joya de pe kale kabo pe kale chenne mato yongi meba de tongdu samsam la ngaso yitang chegirwa che togi mindu samne tene tetu ngaso kandes samgore yitang chetu
Ta yidong chedu chegirwa ina yo, ta gase gurugo, soso ge encourage zo gurwa. Tini medab kol sono ton, tanjo nye kawe ge sono ton na, yidong cheya ge, yidong che yuiba da u meba junzi de zo hako gurwa. Ten kawal muntene dunga shi deni tona, yidong che goya rindowa. Kawal muntene deni maduwa ina, yidong cheya munduwa. Ta deso kol sono ton gungduwa.
um, so I read out uh, Mia's question to Kempula. I'll read it out now once. When one looks at the world today, it's not difficult to see the faults of samsara in the suffering of beings, the madness of war, and the empty exaltation of wealth, fame, status, and superficiality. Yet the real difficulty may lie not in recognizing these things, but in not forgetting them, especially when one's own circumstances are favorable. Whatever good conditions we enjoy are also impermanent, and when we see that the poisons still remain with us, and the transformation comes only slowly, it's easy to grow discouraged or disillusioned. How then can one keep this recognition alive and let it truly sustain one's practice? Skempula says, yes, we do get discouraged. That happens. But at that point, we have to encourage ourselves a little bit. And we can even think about how um, we should know the real reason to feel discouraged. The real reasons to feel discouraged with samsara is what we just talked about, the four mind changings, right? So if you do want to continue to live in samsara, then you don't really need to feel discouraged with samsara. But if you don't want to continue to live on in samsara, then this discouragement, disillusionment with samsara is precious. Tene tamade kebola ki
다 단자들와 저
lala.
소소를 생후다고 구기에서 다 생후 거노데 후체고 구기에서 되니 에 산산 깔라카야 되 우기에서 말이 빼나가 호바타바 추세 손도 시갈레 롱네 아니가 추세질레 gemba 코라 지기에리 가스나 나라 터 나사 뜻인도와 다데 산산 나로니 도기 무두데 이나 아니 터 나사 뜻소 강가 때기를 son에 셰스 생후 셰와이나 로송 롱 투긴도와 테노신 생후 데 구이에서
Um, and I think in this regard, we need some mental strength. We need strong sense of motivation. Kempela says that he himself wakes up at 3:30 in the morning and goes to do Kora. And that's because he has a disease, a blood blood pressure,
예.
yeah, a blood pressure related disease. And so that's one way you can motivate yourself, that you think that I actually have to do this. I have to get up and exercise. So this will help. Then it, you know, chigdido kimberleki mitape kor gomtang kandes kongore.
아 미다바 강구도 아니 케아임바 타체 아니 시위지 주진 몸보예 마시비지 주진 뉴뉴임바 아니 지진 이미임바 난지 참이임바 돼서 야부 시보지 생리예바시네 아니 강구로와
You should think very carefully about how there are a lot of conditions that might make us die. And there are not many conditions, not many things that help our health, that sustain our lives. And you should also think really carefully about how there's absolutely no certainty as to when you'll die. So keeping these things in mind, really having some certainty, then you can meditate on that.
간세 데 소노토엔 라기리 nom바키
Meditation actually involves thinking in Buddhism.
어 reason 데서 세네 아날라티카 존에 아니 조안도기로와 마인드데
If we really look carefully at the reasons, go through the analysis, then our minds will actually change.
다 강라나 텔라이에요
That's what meditation really means.
pena milarepa kon hiali hiene relichimba yins any kadu higi ha magawa de sono ton ton shene any konge tendo de ha kosons tanga hina heno me se lawaro
Milarepa says that I was scared of death, and therefore I went to the mountains. While I was in the mountains, I reflected on how the hour of death, the time I'll pass away, is totally uncertain again and again. But now I have no fear, even if I would die right now.
also
Okay. Tene mitapa gomyak korla tat tebja pecha kareta gosare, kariyasare.
ta medaba ge de ta go e mar zombili kanga ta de na digido kanga medaba ge de rindo
Actually, oh yeah, the question was, is there any book to read for reasonings or analysis about impermanence? And Kempela says, You don't need to read a book. You can just look around on the world. The world is full of impermanence. Everything is impermanent.
Midaba ge dete choron ron res, choron dombo pugu res, tini lo ge res, dombo ta nabo res, tini kabu chaw res, dombo dombal nyema yema re, tini nyema chaw res, dombo so yabo res, tini so pe res, deso kanga midaba ge de res, deso lo sono tango re la.
You yourself are the book on impermanence. First, you were a child. Now you're grown up. First, your hair was black. Now it's turned white. First, your face had no wrinkles. Now there are wrinkles. First, you had good teeth, and now your teeth are falling out. So, actually, we ourselves, we are the book that we can read to understand
Ye
about impermanence.
na ta de lo ay na ngendo ko teso, kuzon la mi khanu da bo teso logre.
But for specific books, then you can read the words of my perfect teacher. Okay, so thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week
Thank
on
you.
Saturday. Thank
Okay.
Thank you
you.
very much again. And by
Okay.
the way, the
Okay.
first teaching is on YouTube now, so maybe I'll share the link if you want to, if others would like to see that. I think some of you were not there on the first teachings. I can share the link. Give me a second. Um, a minute.
Yes, very good. Yeah, exactly. All
Yeah,
the sequence
okay,
are.
I'll have to do it next time because it's I have to search through my computer. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thank you so much again. And see you all
Okay.
next
Thank
week.
you, Lasso.
Bye bye.
Lasso. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye bye.